Good evening, everyone. I'm going to join in Rabbi Hagioff for this conversation as he is going to be at a different location this week than I am. Here we go. Except,
Hello,
there you
Rabbi
go.
Abragimov.
Hello, Rabbi Hagioff. Unfortunately, I do not have the zechut
You
of
know
having
what?
you
It's
right by
just,
my
it's just not
side.
the same. I don't
We
know
have
what
to
to tell you.
tele.
I don't feel good. Just wait a minute. Okay, here we
Definitely
go.
not the same.
Okay, a little better. How's that? All this artwork. This is not my artwork, by the way. This is my children. For some reason, they use my office as a dumping
Sure.
ground for all their beautiful artwork.
Nice. All right. So listen, we have a difficult topic tonight to cover, and the conversation tonight is about Aliyah,
I just want to be
now
clear
or
that
never.
just to remove Rabbi Abragimov for any blame for this topic. This is a topic which I chose. Usually Rabbi Abragimov chooses the topics. I chose the topic this evening because it's a constant question I keep getting from people. Even last night, I received a call from a good friend in California who, after a long discussion, was saying, should I be moving to Israel right now? These are a common question I get. It's a common question my wife and I ask ourselves. And also philosophically and practically, it's a really important question that we need to thrash out.
Well, let's take a step back for a second. Okay. Well, why are we having this conversation now? Like, what's motivating us? Well, why are we having this conversation? Like,
Okay,
why is
so
this the topic for this for
I'm going to
tonight?
give you a few reasons for that. And you can chime in or you can disagree.
I mean, shouldn't
There's
we
no doubt
always be
about it.
considering
We
making
should.
Aliyah? Like,
But
why?
let's
Like,
be
why are we
honest.
having this
And this
conversation
is
now?
a sad truth. And that is when times become difficult for Jewish people through anti-Semitism and through sometimes financial difficulties, people look to Eretz Yisrael. And it's sad that it takes that in order to push that. It's a reality and it's a truth. So this is one of the reasons. There's definitely been an uptick in anti-Semitism. I heard from a friend who works in Nefesh B'Nefesh that during COVID, with all the restrictions that were here, they were like, if I'm going to be stuck at home, I must be stuck at home in Israel. And the amount of applications for Aliyah during COVID spiked by a tremendous amount. So anti-Semitism definitely has a role to play in this, and also COVID. But also, let's talk about Mashiach. People have a feeling that things are moving very fast, and this is a topic we have to double click on a little bit this evening in terms of Mashiach's arrival. And their thinking is, to me, this guy last night, this was his reason. He's not feeling anti-Semitism in California where he is, and he's doing financially well. And he said, I just feel Mashiach is at hand, and I want to be in Israel when that happens. So that's something I do want to discuss on the podcast this evening.
Okay, awesome. Because, like, I mean, while I think Mashiach is when Mashiach, Mashiach, for those of you that are not familiar, it means the Messiah. It's represents a messianic age. Whereas Jews, we believe that the world is able to bring back prophecy and a deeper, more clear connection to the infinite, to God. And that's something that we pray for. We've been praying for so long, and we believe that at some point, Israel becomes the capital of the world. And the world as we know it goes through certain kinds of changes. Not many changes
Yeah.
depending on who you ask, but certainly lots of changes. But let's I think that conversation is important. Let's talk about the practical conversation of Aliyah. What is there a mitzvah to live in Israel? Should we forget about anti-Semitism, even though I think that's definitely a motivation? But like, is this something that you should always be considering? And how are they making that decision? How are you determining when to get up, when to go? Is it only when it's bad? Can you go when things are good? What is making Aliyah about? How does one consider it? What are some thoughts that can help guide them in
Okay, so
understanding this topic
the
more
short answer
meaningfully?
is you need to speak to your own LOR, your local Orthodox rabbi, to figure out whether it's right for you right now. I don't expect myself or you, Rabbi Ruvain, to be able to just give it, right, let's all go. There's a time to it, there's preparation. Is it a mitzvah? Let's start with that. And the answer is, according to the Ramban, is actually one of the Tariag mitzvot. One of the 613 mitzvot that you fulfill. Actually, it's a beautiful mitzvah because most mitzvot you can only fulfill with one part of your body. You eat the matzah, you hear the shofar, you wear the tefillin with your arm, you walk to the Bet Knesset. Here you're able, just like Sukkah, and there is a correlation, able to fill it with
or
every
mikveh.
limb and sinew of your body. Others say it's not one of the Tariag mitzvot. It's not one of the 630 mitzvot. However, if a person does go to live in Israel, every mitzvah, the Ben Shai says, every mitzvah you do is worth way more in the land of Israel than elsewhere. And on the flip side, because it's always 50-50, the Avera for sins performed in Israel are also much, much worse. The land of Israel, the Torah tells us in Kedoshim, that is, the land itself vomits out, it vomits out its inhabitants. It doesn't tolerate bad behavior. That's the land of Israel. It's like a, Rashi says, it's like a sensitive stomach. The wrong food goes in, whoop, it comes out. So the land of Israel is a spiritual land, the most spiritual place on all of earth. And the way we act in it is really, really important in terms of our ability to live there in tranquility, because the Torah tells us that Hashem's eyes are on the land, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So the land of Israel has an extra special hashgacha, special vision and view that Hashem and running that Hashem has on the land itself. So living in Israel comes with tremendous responsibility.
So are you saying that the only people that should be considering making Aliyah are people that want to live a spiritually more
I'm assuming that
exact
everyone
life?
who is willing to move to Israel, if they're not doing that right now or having that as a motivation, it's still worth doing. And the Gemara tells us just walking, and the Rambam brings the halakha, walking Daled Amot, land of Israel, just 4 steps is a mitzvah. I'll just mention that I just went, as you know, with the group to Israel. I got back last week, so maybe that's why Israel's in my head as well. But the land of Israel can influence people tremendously. People who never thought they'd feel that connection. We've both seen it. We've both had a lot of trips. People who just go because we'll ever go to Israel for vacation. It can change their lives. One moment in the land has tremendous spiritual power that you're never going to get in Manhattan or New Jersey.
There's no question about it that Israel is one of the few places on planet Earth where it's the only place where I actually feel at home, like a fish in water. It's where I feel like I do belong. There's no question about it. And I definitely feel a deep spiritual connection, a historical connection, a connection in terms of heritage and so on and so forth. Okay, we got that. We understand that there's a tremendous spiritual value there. And even if you're not going for spiritual reasons, at least you're with your people, you're with your army, you're with your friends and family, people that, won't discriminate against you because of your religion or your belief. My question is, okay, fine. So we see that there's value, there's commandments, there's value in being in Israel. When does someone determine when it's time to go? Like, what has to happen? How bad does that have to be? Does it got to be like Soviet style, like Russia? It's got to be like Nazis in Germany. Like, what has to happen? What are the tell signs for a Jew to say, hey, you know what? If these things happen, I got to get up and I got to go somewhere.
You're going to the other extreme. I mean, the motivation to go to Israel should be, I guess. Oh God, let's be very clear. I don't live in Israel.
Listen, you and I are having this conversation in America, and while we both see the tremendous value in living in Israel, we love the land, we love the people, and yet here we are. We're having a conversation here. I don't know. I'm not even sure if it's fair for us to have a conversation. But we're having it because we understand.
To know, we had this conversation before. We were choosing a topic for tonight, and Rabbi Red was like, "We can't have this conversation because we don't live in Israel." And I said, "That's exactly why we should have this conversation. If we're living in Israel, like, yeah, sure, let's all go. Everyone sell their businesses, give up on their family, leave the parents behind, and off you go." I think the people like us who are in Chutz La'aretz right now, who are able to say honestly that Chutz La'aretz, outside of Israel, about this interesting. We Jews, we define the world in 2 locations, in Israel and outside of Israel. You're either in the land or outside. It's a small, tiny piece of land, you know?
Right.
And yet we see we're outside. Right now, we are outside. We are outside. I don't think any Jew, a believing Jew, no matter where they are in the entire world, should not be having this conversation at least once a month. My wife and I are constantly challenging each other and working on this to try to figure out whether we are in the right place right now. This is very, very important. However, I want to add something very important. I am in close contact with the Rabbanim. I just saw one recently in Israel, bumped into him by coincidence in a supermarket in Israel. And he asked me a lot of questions. You can do that in Israel, right? In a supermarket, backwards and forwards. And then he actually made Aliya a number of years ago. And he said, I know you and your wife are talking about it always. You need to be in Chutz La'aretz still. Now, I know there are many people who are listening who live in Israel who do not like to hear this. But my life goes through my rabbi and my teachers, people who know me well, I have a connection with, who know what I do, the work that I'm doing. And at this point in my life, I am located in Chutz La'aretz doing the work that I do. And we know there's three reasons why a person's allowed to leave Israel, be outside of Israel.
Right.
One is Parnassah, one is Torah, and one is Shidduchim. Okay? Now, people are, well, you stay in Israel, Hashem will bless you with that as well. And that's also true. I'm just telling you what the Gemara says. So right now, for me, according to my rabbis, because rabbis also have rabbis, Chutz La'aretz is where I need to be right now. But that can change very quickly.
Great. Look, there's no question. If you're here, it's probably because you have to be here. You have to be here because of your family. You got to be here because you're dating. You got to be here because of your job, or nasa, other obligations. There's no question. If I had nothing here, I would definitely be there. So if you're here, we're assuming that you're here because you need to be here right now. But now my question is, well, for some reason, now my question is, okay, now having said all that, when does someone say, you know what, even with all these things going on, I got to get up, I got to go?
That is a very, very personal answer that everyone needs to answer for themselves. I want to add as well, there's single people who need to come to that decision in terms of finding their beshert, their zivug. But there's also married people with kids, and bringing up kids in Israel, let's just say it as it is, can be difficult. It can be challenging where you are. Someone who grew up outside of Israel, going to Israel, there's challenges that come with this. There's no doubt about it. So this is a very personal decision that every Jew needs to make. Having said that, I did mention to you, if you remember, that my friend told me, I never did this, but he told me that Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzedek V'Bracha, who just passed away, lived in Israel. I wouldn't call him a great Zionistic rabbi, but he told me, and I've heard from a few people, whenever someone said, should I or shouldn't I, and had that question, nearly every time he said, go. Move to Israel. That was his.
Irrespective of the challenge, of the family, financially,
He didn't say
on the children, socially, psychologically,
if you have a question,
mentally.
Come to Israel, it'll be fine. It'll work out.
Okay, great. Ladies. Now, I'm gonna share something with you because I have a hard time with that answer. For me, there has to be. I'm more of a rationalist, and while I do believe in spiritual things, I do think that you need to be practical. But as a practical thinking person about being in Chutz La'aretz versus being in Eretz Yisrael, for me the big sign, the tell sign would be if I can't express my Judaism externally.
So you're waiting
time for me to get up.
The worst case scenario is what you're saying. That's pretty
no,
bad.
That's not the worst case. There are worse. There are scenarios that are worse than that. I mean, I could be Jewish, but if I wear a yarmulke walking down the street, I'm probably going to get mugged. Like certain places in Europe are like that. Like you just can't express external symbols of religion are no. You're not doing it. You're not going to try even. You're wearing your cap. You have to tuck in your star. You can't wear it outside. If it comes to a time like that in America where I can no longer walk around feeling safe as a Jew, for me, that is the sign where it's just going to get worse from there. I got to get and go.
Because what I always do is, as it were, it's going to sound weird, I put myself in God's shoes. And I think, well, if I do want Jews to move to Israel, let's assume that's the truth. Although Hashem wants us to do mitzvot wherever we are. We have the mitzvot. That's why the Torah was given outside of Israel. Let's remember this. Also given in the Sinai desert outside of Israel, because the Torah is for the entire world. Had it been given in Israel, what would we have thought, understandably, but incorrectly, that the Torah and the mitzvot are only for the land of Israel, just like American law is only for American, British law is only for Britain. However, we know the Torah was given outside. To say that every Jew, wherever they are, in Israel, in Galut, has the same obligation, expectation to follow Torah and do mitzvot. But let's assume that God wants us, because we do know the mitzvot in Israel are worth a lot more. No one disputes that. Then, heaven forbid, you're asking God, as it were, heaven forbid, chas v'chalila, that he should make things difficult that would make you want to move there. No? I mean, that would be a obvious response to that.
100%. You know, I still think that ultimately, you know, you need to be responsible, you know, in terms of the psychological, emotional health of your family.
That's a priority.
Obviously, that comes first, and that just moving, even if like I've seen so many people move, and it was like a move that was made by inspiration and idealism, and wow, that's all beautiful.
Many people moved to neighborhoods that they felt, wow, this is going to be an amazing place for my family, but in the end, ended up being terrible. And you look at that comment that just was made. The comment that's just made, someone wrote in Hebrew, is that, you know, even for Israelis who come back and bring their kids, it can be difficult for them to live in the land itself. It comes with a challenge. You know, one of the three things
100%,
living in Israel,
100%.
that the land of Israel, that is acquired through Isurim, through challenge and difficulty.
Through Isurim, yeah, 100%. There's no question about it. There's always been challenge, and there's no question that living in the land of Israel, there's all kinds of meaningful benefits. But I don't want. I want to stick to, we're in Chutz La'aretz, and you and I are having this conversation, and the topic tonight was when to, you know, now or never. When are we making Aliyah? When do we just are we telling everyone tonight?
That's
just
not.
Make Aliyah
You'll hear many rabbis say that.
There
are many rabbis out there who will say, I don't care what you're thinking, what you're going through, you should be in Israel right now. There are very great, amazing rabbis who say that. That is not what I'm saying, and I don't think it's what you're going to say either. Everyone needs to make their own personal calculation, because there is something, it's going to sound crazy, which is more important than living in Israel, and that is the spiritual, emotional, psychological health that comes with a family, and timing is a major part of that. So just dropping everything and moving to Israel isn't always a solution for every person, no matter how commendable it is.
Well, what would need to happen? And this is sound, I mean, there's no way to answer this, but like, what would need to happen for you to say, you know what? I know this is not the best thing for my family, but the circumstances are such where I need to go. What would need to happen for you to say, I'm getting up and I'm going?
I'm going to have to agree with you. When it becomes extremely difficult to practice my Judaism, which is the priority in my life, no matter where I am, okay? There's no doubt about that. But yeah, to practice my Judaism, if I was not able to do that safely, then I would probably speed up my Aliyah to Israel. I would probably do that. No doubt about that.
What was that sigh? What was that moment of like that deep breath?
Because
before you
it's
said
a sad thing to think about. It's sad that, you know, what's preventing us is just like a lot of anti-Semitism waiting to hit us. But we're going to assume that's not the case for most people around the, well, I hope for most people around the world. Okay, that is for a lot. Ethiopians, look at Ukrainians, you know. And by the way, let's not forget the 500,000 to 1 million Israelis who live in the United States right now, just in the United States. Right, that's a lot of Dead Sea cream being sold in the malls. Yeah, bad T-shirts, and a lot of
ahava.
No doubt about that. So I would like to think what's going to motivate me.
So you're saying,
is
so ultimately,
for my and my family's spiritual trajectory, Israel needs to be part of that plan, being in the land of Israel. And there's people going to disagree with me, though. I'm telling you right now, there are many friends and colleagues who will attack me for saying that and say that I'm making a gross mistake, waiting for some final moment in order to move and live in the land of Israel. I hear that and I accept it, but that's where I am right now. Everyone needs to make a din and cheshbon of their own nefesh and their own lives, of the best place to be for them.
Right. Listen, I think that I think you and I would both agree that if there was a way for us to make it happen now, we would make it happen now.
No, I would disagree with that. I'm able to make it
You
happen
disagree with
now. I
that.
could do it. I could sell my house, quit all my
And
jobs,
you're
and go.
saying that you're not doing it simply
What's
because you
preventing me?
okay.
Among my, well, it's not, maybe what you said is partly true. My family here, we're involved in a part of our life where it would definitely be more challenging to move right now for other personal reasons in terms of my family. However, by the way, every time I speak to my mother, she's like, "What are you doing? Let's go to Jerusalem." Yeah.
And your mom lives in London,
She's
right?
Israeli. She's
What's it called? Are your children? Do your children know that are you planning on
one
making
day,
Aliyah
yes.
later
That
as
is
a retirement? Like
definitely
when
my
are you going to
plan.
go?
Definitely.
So your kids know that if they want their children to have a relationship with you, that
They
they're going to have to make
understand
Aliyah as
that's
well,
what
or
they
they
don't
could
think
just
that
be
far ahead. They
visiting
just
them in
think about,
America.
or having for lunch when they're going to school. But they know we make it a point. I grew up in a very Zionistic family, like extremely. I will add, coming from London, that the connection between the Jewish people in England and Israel and the land of Israel is tighter than I've seen it among the Americans. I think distance is part of that,
It's both
but and the anti-Semitism that I grew up with, it's always there. We used to go
proximity.
to Israel, 2, 3 times a year, right? It's like a 4-hour flight. It's different. It's different. It's affordable. There's a strong connection. Even the
Right.
most religious people that I know in England, the most Haredi, there's just a strong, maybe I'm imagining it, but I feel there's a stronger connection, a bond between them and the land of Israel. That's what I feel. That's
Mhm.
an observation. It may be anecdotal, but it's an observation. So my kids know that we have this conversation all the time. I don't think a month goes by when we're like, well, should we be here? Or could we be doing more in the land of Israel? You don't have that conversation with your wife regularly with the Rebbitzin?
So I have it all the time, and I actually have a 10-year plan. My goal is 10 years. So it's 8 years actually. My goal is in 8 years from now to be able to make Aliyah. I wouldn't. That doesn't mean that I would leave the things I'm doing here, but certainly it means I would sell my possessions and look for something to buy and start preparing that major transition. My children know it. My kids are dating, and they're ideally would like to
Wow.
date people that want to live in Israel, not just who want to
Yeah.
stay here. That's important to them. That's part of their what they're looking for. Obviously, if they don't get it, they don't
Let
get
me
it,
ask you
but
a quick question,
certainly
by
that's
the
what they
way. What's in
want.
my head? I'm so sorry.
Because
Have you met people who've
yeah,
made Aliyah who've
sure,
regretted it?
sure. I've met people that have made Aliyah that
Come
have come back.
back
You're redeemed, yeah, 100%.
because they weren't happy in Israel or
Yeah,
had something else
yeah. As a matter of
outside.
fact, that's way more. Yeah, yeah. They weren't happy. They
I've
couldn't make it work. It was bad for their
never.
children. It was bad for them socially. It was bad for their marriages. It's certainly, listen, I mean, we could speak about the challenges. Israel is not an easy place. It's not an easy place to make a parnassa. It's certainly, you have to have, it's just a hard place.
Um,
It's a harsh environment.
it is, well, the
Taxes are
taxes here
really
also,
high.
taxes in
The
America also not
trade-off
easy. What
is
are we paying
that,
over here?
yeah, you're not paying 117%
There
tax on buying
is
a car.
that's true. But the spiritual,
You're not spending 100%
yeah, I hear.
taxes on buying a microwave. You know what I'm saying? Like everything is taxed because you got to pay for the army, and I get it, and it's
It
worth
can't,
it. I'm just saying, like
definitely,
it's hard. It's
definitely,
hard. Most third generation Israelis that have lived in Israel don't own a house because they just don't have the money for it. We're lucky that we're foreigners. With foreign money, we can come in and
well,
we pretty
Israel
much can buy whatever
right
we
now,
want
Tel
in
Aviv
Israel
right
and live
now
somewhat comfortably. But most
is the
Israelis
square
don't have
foot,
that.
same price as Manhattan.
Like
The
Manhattan.
prices have
Yeah,
become
it's true.
insane.
Right. You're proving my point. So how do we how do we create a reality where we're bringing our kids to a place which is
I
not
wouldn't say
sustainable
it's not
financially?
no, 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 no.
Like ultimately,
Saying you can't have all the luxuries you have outside of Israel is one thing, like 2 cars, right? doesn't mean you can't support a family and live a nice life. There's definitely more of a socialist, my wife said communist, but socialist society in the land of Israel. But that does mean that the government does take care of you in many, many ways. And a lot of things that you pay for in America, Jewish schooling over there is a fraction of what it is over here. Let's add that into the general equation. Okay? It's just a big financial difference. Think about what we spend in yeshiva tuition.
It's true. It's true. It's true. All I'm saying, what I'm fine is I have my brother-in-law made Aliyah, about 4 years ago now. And, he has an American job and he's able to live on his American salary in Israel, and he's just making it because he's just making it because things are expensive there. You're getting taxed high there also. Your grocery bills aren't cheap, or maybe just because he's used to living in an American lifestyle, but it's hard. It's hard. Even with all the tuition breaks.
My oldest daughter came back. She did a year over there. And my second daughter is doing her second year. My third daughter, God willing, is looking to go in September. There's no doubt about it. They will tell you that it comes with a challenge. And they say that there's many things they got used to in America they just don't have when they're there. They just don't have it when they're there. You just kind of have to. It comes with a price and it comes with a cost. This person is saying, I don't know who this is over here. Can you read that?
It's
Europe, most Europeans, they think it's much easier to visit Israel a few times a year than it is to live there.
They're used to it.
I hear you. Yeah, I'm with that. They think I'll get the benefits of just traveling there a bunch of times. That's how I grew up. Then actually, setting roots down and education, everything else. Okay? There's no doubt about it. By New York, yeah.
It's true, and also for me, I actually lived in Israel for 4 years when we were first married. My wife was always she never had any intention of coming back to the States, and though I lived there for 4 years, I realized very quickly I have no idea how I'm going to support my family here. Going into rabbinic certainly is not an easy. It's not easier. It's not an easier profession in Israel. It's more difficult. And the truth is, I felt like there's not really much of a need for me and my talents there. I could do way more here, and I have no regrets in making that decision. I feel like I've done great things here.
You have, you have.
And oh, thank you.
But could you have
likewise.
done great work in Israel too? That's definitely a question.
I may have, but I'll tell you the difference. The difference is that I'm American. That I understand the people here. I know their background. I know where they're coming from. I relate to the culture. I understand. I know how to. I knew. And the other thing, by the way, for me was also I didn't want to be an immigrant for my children. I didn't want, which is a weird thing because my parents are immigrants, and I know how hard it was for me to have immigrant parents, and I didn't want to be an immigrant for my children. What does my dad know? He's American. He's not Israeli, and I didn't want to deal with that either. There's lots of social
I'm
things
from London. They see me what do you know, Dad? You're so well.
but you're still, British.
Can we just change the thing a little bit? Although this is really fascinating. I've really enjoyed this conversation so far.
Sure.
But let's just talk about Mashiach, because one of the most important, if not the primary source for Mashiach's arrival and proof that he is Mashiach is the pre-Messianic era, which, as you know, those who know me well know that I believe we're in right now, is the return of the Jewish people, as the prophet Isaiah tells us, from the four corners of the earth. So there's a very strong connection to Mashiach's arrival and the Jewish people living in Israel. So people ask me a lot, well, if you're a believer of that, shouldn't you be motivated to expedite the arrival of Mashiach and to move to Israel? I get asked that a lot. What are your thoughts on that? If you have any, you don't have to. And if not, I'll give you a little thought of my own.
There's an old idea I saw. I don't remember where I saw that. That one of the simanim, one of the signs that you're living in the Yemot Mashiach or the pre-Messianic era is when the majority of the Jews actually moved to Israel. And we're actually seeing that already. We're seeing that there's right now for the first time in history there are
We're
more Jews actually living
not
in
there
Israel than
yet,
outside of
but
Israel.
we're on the cusp. We're on the cusp of that happening, of more Jews in Israel than Chutz La'aretz, which we've not had for 2,000 years, by the way. So it's an amazing accomplishment.
I think that happened officially. It happened in 2007, where the largest
It didn't.
group of
Just I'll tell you
Jews were
why.
in America. Not all of the diaspora, not all of the exile, but just the largest Jewish community. For the first
Yeah.
time, the largest exiled community was in America. In 2007, I think that number switched over
So
to Israel for the
didn't.
first time.
It didn't. It got very close, but I'm talking of Jews in Israel outside, including America and France, which has 1 million Jews, and England, which probably has 250 to 300,000 Jews. And you have Italy and the other outside areas, South Africa, of course, and South America. But it's important because and this is really key, one of the key prerequisites to Mashiach's arrival, since we're taking that part of the conversation, is that prophecy is going to return to the Jewish people. In order to have prophecy for the Jewish people, you do need at least 50% of the Jewish people living in the land of Israel. So prophecy, there's an equation.
You don't think we have that right
in
now?
order to have prophecy, in order to have Mashiach, you need a Sanhedrin, you need prophecy. Elijah the prophet comes beforehand. Actually, Daniel the prophet says that many people are going to receive Nevuah, prophecy. In order to have that, you need half the Jewish people living in Israel. We aren't as there yet, but we're getting very, very, very close. So the question is, well, could we not speed that up by moving to Israel? Just looking at leaving everything aside we've discussed so far in terms of challenges, difficulties, but just in terms of the messianic aspect, are we maybe preventing Mashiach from coming by not living in Israel?
Listen, I think that if the what we'll call the enlightened Jews all left, we'd be leaving behind a whole lot of Jews that we're never really given a fair chance to appreciate and understand the
What do you say?
nuance to
Should
why they
stay
need to be
here
there.
then?
I think that I'm saying that, yeah, I'm saying that we're staying here for them. That's why we're here, 100%. I'm here
Okay,
for them. I'm here
that's
to
you. That
make
may
sure that
not
my
be
people,
everyone.
my
Most Jews will not
flock,
say that. You're just in Jewish
my
education
flock.
as a rabbi, so you definitely have that.
No, and I would say that I think that most people that are here would even argue and say, listen, like, I don't know how to do it there. And like Ada was saying earlier, that like most of the families that she's seen that are in Israel are still keeping their U.S. jobs. I know a guy who flies into it. He's a
Yeah.
dentist who has an office in Woodmere,
I
and he's on a plane once
I
a
think I know who
week,
you're
and
talking
he's
about. I
coming home for
know
Shabbat, which I think is
my optician was doing that, my optometrist. I know nurses make more here 1 week a month than they make 4 weeks in the land of Israel. I couldn't do that. I come back from Israel. It takes me
right.
2 weeks just to get my head back.
So
I don't know how they do it. There's no doubt about it. Many occupations make a considerable more higher amount of money. But let me just on the Mashiach one piece, because I don't want people to leave with that question unanswered. I will say that from my reading, and there are people who disagree with me, but I've yet to find a source that says, a clear source from a more historical writer, that moving to Israel is going to speed up the arrival of Mashiach. I could be wrong, but I've never seen.
you said that it will, or you have not seen it.
There are modern rabbis who will say that.
Uh,
There's no doubt about it, and they're entitled to their opinion. They're greater or more learned than me, but historically speaking, that's not to say that many people did not try. Vilna Gaon, right? Attempted. His students moved, right?
the
Ramban, right? Well,
Ramban
he lived
also
up to
did.
his
Yeah,
as he
there are
started.
lots
He
of
saw it
times
as
in
one of the
history where
mitzvot of the Torah.
people.
He saw it as an obligation from the Torah to move to Israel, and he managed to do it towards the end of his life.
So how do we ending this
I think we have to
conversation?
end it the way we started it, and that is, there is no. First of all, we're outside of Israel, so bit of a chutzpah us even having the conversation. I will add, this is and
Right.
you can have the final word. I will add that every Jewish person who is a believing Jew in Chutz La'aretz needs to be constantly having the conversation with my life. What do I need to do in order to get to Israel? That's a conversation. It just needs to be part of your conversation. I don't think a month should go by where they're like, we need to be in
Right.
Israel. Okay? And I know I have rabbi colleagues of mine who are infuriated when I make such a statement because they're in Israel. They're like, what are you talking about? But everyone needs to have that conversation. It should be spoken. Let your kids hear it. Let yourself, let your own ears hear that we need to be in Eretz HaKodesh. That is the homeland of the Jewish people, no matter what they tell you online, always has been. What can I do in order to get to that place? In order to get that place with myself, my family, my parnasa, it needs to be at least moving in, in that direction. And in the end, it comes down to everyone individual needs to have a spiritual guide to figure out how, when, and where they should be in the land of Israel.
I'm gonna add to that, and I'll say, listen, for me as a student of history, I know that Jews throughout history have been very comfortable in the host countries that they've been in, but historically, Jews have left every other country that they've been in. And while this country has been amazing, I won't be surprised if we get to a point where we're not welcome here either. That's not the reason why we should be thinking about going to Israel. Like you said, Israel should be part of the conversation. Our family and friends should definitely be talking about it. They need to know that this is something that's on our mind. And definitely we should be trying to figure out a way of meaningfully getting there so that, we could take care of our family in a financial way, in a psychological, mental health way. And be part of that awesome story, that comeback story of Jewish people who were exiled for thousands of years, who come back to rebuild a land whose purpose, by the way, believe it or not, is really to express peace. I said this under the chuppah. Yerushalayim comes from the words Ir Shalom, city of peace. And the irony is that Jerusalem has been conquered more than any other city in history. And the question is, well, if they named it the city of peace, why is there so many wars still till this day being fought there? And the answer that I often give, although I'd love to hear yours, is that anything in the world that has the ability to do one thing has to have the ability to do the opposite. So if just like right now, Israel's a hot button issue for everywhere around the world, Palestinian, Jewish and whatnot. If we as people, as human beings, forget about Jewish right now, if we're able to figure out a way of making peace there, we could bring peace, God willing, soon to the whole entire planet.
There's no doubt about it that the Torah and the life of the Jewish peoples is will and is right now, shining forth from Yerushalayim. There's no doubt about it. We're feeling that, just the amount of time that it's written about and spoken about in the world and the media, It's sad. I still think that anti-Semitism is the main motivator for many people to move to the land of Israel. And hopefully that won't be the reason that most of us will end up in the land of Israel, but it should be part, and I'll finish with, everyone's conversation needs to be when, how, and where. How am I going to make this happen? Whether it happens or not is almost, I don't want to say irrelevant, but secondary to at least your vision of seeing yourself in that land.
So to answer the question, Aliya, now or never, your answer is eventually.
Yeah.
That's why we say Shana Haba. You should not Shana Hazeh. You keep saying it next year. This year, I'm still going to finish up my business. Maybe next year I'll go. Push it off a little bit. Anyway.
Awesome.
Looking forward to continuing our
conversations. Anyone has any other topics,
willing,
they should
next
definitely
week.
be in touch.
Same time, same place.
With myself or with you.
Private message us, and we're happy to cover the topic. Thank you so much for participating. I hope you walked away with some insight. Looking forward to more meaningful conversations. Laila to everybody. Have an amazing week. Shavua tov. Shana Hazeh b'Yerushalayim, my friends.